Hi, Joyce at Delightful Quilting and Sewing, a knolting dealer in Avon, New York. Today I want to talk about a very integral part of our sewing machine, and that is the bobbin and the bobbin case. In the knolting NV that I have here, I chose to have the optional M class bobbin, the larger capacity bobbin, put in this machine, as well as the Pro that's over here, choosing the larger M-class bobbin, which holds about twice as much thread as the L series bobbin. And one of the questions that I often get is, well, I'll just get the L and I can have it changed to the M later. No, you cannot. That will not happen. All of the dimensions and things are set up when they design these machines, and so it's either set up for an L or an M. Now, some of the machines like the Fun Quilter, which I don't happen to have any in my studio right now, the last one went out the door yesterday, that has an L bobbin, and that one does not have an opportunity to have an M bobbin in it. It only has the L bobbin, which is the smaller one. So here we have the two. This is the L bobbin right here, and if you put it next to the M bobbin, you can see the difference in size. And of course, the bobbin case as well is going to be a different size, so you can see the difference between the L and the M. One of the things about the two, besides the size, is the importance of what is inside the bobbin case. And they both have what's called a backlash spring. Now this is an M class bobbin case right here, and that oval kind of coppery looking device in there is the backlash spring. It's a thin piece of metal that's curved, and this is what it looks like. I took it out of a bobbin case. It's curved like this, and it protrudes out towards the bobbin itself, and it pushes out on the bobbin, and its purpose is to slow the spin of the bobbin down when you stop stitching, so that the thread just doesn't keep unwinding due to the inertia of the spin of the bobbin itself. And there is one similar to this in the L bobbin case, but it looks a little bit different. It looks like the letter J in there, and you can see the little screw in the top right corner that screws that one in. And inside this case right here, the screw is on the left-hand side of the spindle there that holds this backlash spring in. Now, although under most circumstances you want this backlash spring to be in there, I do have a bobbin case, an M-style bobbin case, that I've taken that spring out of. And that's because it works better for that particular application. Now, I know that many of you like to use glide thread, which is what this cone is right here. And I have some suggestions for using glide thread. Glide thread is what is called a trilobal polyester thread, and it gets its sheen because of the manufacture, the way that the fibers are manufactured. They're actually three-sided. That's where you get the trilobal from, and as a result, it reflects the light differently, and that's why you get this sheen, and when it stitches out, it looks beautiful on our quilts. But it's also, because of its manufacture, it's very slippery. And as a result, it's sometimes difficult to manage, and sometimes the tension is very difficult to manage as well. One of my suggestions for using a slippery thread like this, glide or others that are similar trilobal threads, is to use a thread net on the cone all the way up to right about here, to keep it from puddling, because this thread is so slippery that when you let go of it, or when the machine stops sewing, this thread just puddles right down the cone. And then when you start stitching again, it has to pull up that slack, and the tension is going to be different during that time as it's pulling up that slack until there's an even amount of tension on that thread going through the machine. Well, the same kind of thing happens in the bobbin as well. If you've tried to wind your own bobbins using the trilobal thread, the glide thread, and that's what this is not, you will find that it puddles and gets all loopy on the bobbin. I do not wind glide on any bobbin myself. Instead, if I want the thread to match or come close to it, I buy what are called Magna Glide bobbins. Now this is glide thread. It's a little different shade than the cone over here. But what makes this bobbin different is this little black ring around on this side. That is magnetic. And when you put it into the bobbin case, the difficulty is when you put this kind of a bobbin into a regular bobbin case that has the check spring in there. I tried it for a while. For many years I actually sewed that way, and someone said to me, why don't you try it without the spring? So I did, and I discovered that I like it much better. So in my book, I may actually say something about, leaving the spring in, but as time has gone on, I really prefer using my Magna Glide bobbins in my bobbin case that I've taken the spring out of, and I found it works much better. The other thing about the Magna Glide bobbins, and you see I have my Towa tension guide here, which I use for everything else, but it is challenging to get a good reading with the Magna Glide bobbin. The reason for that is you can see that this very slippery thread is not coming off this bobbin. If this had just been wound onto this bobbin like we normally wind bobbin, handful of thread all over my hand. So what I do instead is I will try it in the Towa tension gauge, but sometimes I just pull it out and use the hand test on it rather than try to get a reading with my Towa gauge. Now, I said that I take this tension spring out of, and you can take it out of both the J and the M class bobbins. So I wanted to show you, I did show you the spring that I had taken out, but if you do this, do it over something that, like a small cup or something. I used a little plastic dish like this that I took the screw out of. I was holding my bobbin case over this little plastic dish like this because this right here is the screw that you take out. It is very tiny. I'm going to put it down here on this rule, which is about 1 inch wide, and that's the size of the screw. It looks like a period at the end of a sentence. It's just so small. And it's not very tall. Again, you can see it's like itty-bitty tiny. So forget it. You'll never find it. It just isn't possible. Whoops, I just dropped it there. So I keep it in this little container right here in case I want to put it back in that bobbin case. So that's how I manage working with the trilobal polyester thread like Glide, that's slippery. And I found that taking that little backlash spring out of my bobbin case, it works much better. And there's plenty of breaking capacity here with this magnetic ring that's on the Magna Glide bobbin. I hope this little tutorial on bobbins and bobbin cases helps a little bit. One of the things I would recommend though is when you are testing any thread in the Towa bobbin gauge, and especially if you're using the M-class bobbin that we use in our knolting machines, we have the little piggy tail right there. Make sure that you have your bobbin threaded correctly in your bobbin case and through the pigtail before you use your Towa bobbin gauge. You want all of the tension devices here, like the spring and the pigtail here, everything that it normally has to go through in the machine. it's threaded through that before you check it in your Towa tension guide. And again, numbers that I use for the Towa guide for the M-class bobbin, anywhere around 200, 175 to 225, maybe 250 are good numbers. I set it just a little bit lower, 200, maybe a little bit lower when I'm using Quilt Magin or IQ. And for the M-class bobbin, the numbers range anywhere from 100 to about 150 on the setting on your Towa tension guide. So that's it for bobbins and bobbin cases, and especially as it applies to the shiny trilobal threads like Glide. Have a great day today, and I look forward to connecting with you next week on Tech Tuesday.